Welcome back. We hope you've had time to think about the importance of having honest conversations with your loved ones and how doing so can help make those relationships so much stronger. Jesus modeled the way for us, and when he instructs us to love one another as he has loved us, we have to see this as an important tool in being able to do that. Last session, we talked about how important it is to recognize facts from the stories we tell ourselves about why we think people say and do the things they do. When we react to our own stories without talking to the other person, we set ourselves and our relationships up for failure. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most important things we can do to successfully have these difficult conversations with grace. How to create and maintain a productive environment that will nurture our relationship and encourage the right kind of dialogue. We believe having these conversations is a way to model the love Jesus has for us. We know that if we avoid difficult conversations with people we love, those relationships will not thrive. In fact, it will start to decay. We are called to live fully and authentically and to love boldly. We honor our relationships and we honor God when we move beyond a superficial smoothing over of every uncomfortable topic. But we have to be equipped to do it well, to do it in a way that strengthens the relationship, and that's why we're here. Here's a quick refresher on what we've already learned. Brenda's going to take us through that.
The definition of a crucial conversation is one where opinions vary, the stakes are high, and the emotions are strong. And remember also that Jesus modeled the way for us to do this. If we are to love others the way that he loves us, then we have to take the time to learn how to do this well. Our natural instinct is to avoid these conversations. We don't want to rock the boat in a relationship, so we stay silent. We make the fool's choice, thinking that we can either speak up and lose the relationship or stay silent and keep the relationship. But if we stay silent for too long, one of two things will happen. One, we will eventually blow up and handle things very badly. We'll say things we wish we hadn't, or the relationship will begin to decline. Jesus showed us over and over again that there's a way to speak truth with grace and offer kindness with candor. But one of the biggest things that gets in our way is our own stories, the made-up meaning we assign to other people's actions and words. We think we're very smart and know exactly what's going on in other people's minds, but we don't. We have to stay humble and stay curious. We can train ourselves to ask these questions, and when we do, we'll slow down and recognize the only way to get honest answers is to ask the other person. The facts are the actions or words that can be recorded, the tangible things that actually happened. The story is the why we assign to those actions, and the story only lives in our heads. The story is not a fact. Remember this vicious cycle? When we respond to our negative stories with silence or violence, meaning we shut down and ignore it, or we answer back with sharp tongues, we then give the other person something to respond to, and they are likely to make up their own story about what you did or said, or what you said you did. Then they respond negatively, and everyone is really only responding to their stories, which are moving us farther and farther away from the facts and farther away from each other. But here's the good news. Knowing that this cycle exists is the first step in breaking it. We have to train ourselves to break out of these negative patterns. In the heat of the moment, we have to remember what God really wants from us. God wants us to live in harmony and to love each other wholly. Our egos are not our friends. Our minds can easily spiral into negative thought patterns, and when this happens, it is not safe to have an open, honest conversation with our loved ones. Even if we think the other person has picked a fight, it's our responsibility to return us to a calm place so we can do the important work of strengthening our relationships.
Let's talk about how we arrive at these critical moments where we have the opportunity to go deeper by being vulnerable with each other and having real, honest conversations. The first is a situation where you know that you need to initiate the conversation. This is ideal because you can prepare yourself ahead of time. You can think about the words you want to use and the outcomes you hope to achieve. You can pray for a new heart and the right spirit before you engage. The second, unfortunately, is much more common. It's where you're caught off guard and are unprepared, where your emotions are likely to kick in long before your brain realizes what's happening. You're likely to go to your default move of silence or violence. Things can escalate quickly if you're not careful. Remember the lizard brain? You're there, and the other person is likely there too. Either way, whether this is a conversation that you have prepared to have with someone, or you find yourself in the middle of it without even realizing it, you have a responsibility to maintain or create an environment where you're both comfortable before you continue. If you find that things start to get heated, step out of the conversation and think about how you want to move forward. You can literally ask for a timeout. Tell the other person that you care deeply about them and want this to be a productive conversation. Remember that you are both experiencing a physiological response that is not bringing out the best in you. Our hearts are racing, the blood leaves our brain, and the adrenaline kicks in. We slip into lizard brain thinking. But we can overcome these instincts just by recognizing them and being intentional in how you move forward.
So how do you know if the conversation is going in the wrong direction? What are some signs we can look for? Number 1, debating. Anytime you notice that you or the other person are debating a point, going back and forth, quickly getting your next point in without really listening to each other, it's no longer productive. These conversations require deep levels of listening and understanding to be effective. Number 2, deflecting. If you or the other person is changing the subject, refusing to focus on the actual topic, bringing up other issues, you're heading in the wrong direction and will not have a relationship building conversation. This one is a very common one right now. The initial issue is raised, and rather than engaging in conversation about the issue, they immediately say, "Oh yeah? Well, what about this?" These conversations require focus to be successful. Number 3, defending. If you or the other person quickly moves to a defensive position without really exploring the issue or making sure they understand exactly what you're talking about first, the environment is not right. This probably sounds like excuses and blaming others to explain why they did what they did or said what they said, and can quickly move into accusing, where they turn it all back on you and explain why you are the real problem and the reason for their behavior. Or they could drag someone else into the whole thing with their accusations. Remember that in all these situations, there's probably a whole lot of a story involved and not a lot of facts. As soon as you recognize any of these things, it's time to take a time out. Realize that you, the person you're talking to, and your relationship are not in a good place to be productive. And remember that your relationship with this person is more important than any point you could possibly be arguing.
As you think about how to move forward, one of the first things you have to do is establish or reestablish respect. The moment someone perceives disrespect, the conversation is over. You may be feeling disrespected yourself and wonder why you have to be the one to do this. You may think you deserve an apology, and you may be right, but right now, in this moment, you are the one who is breaking out of their lizard brain. You are the one who has the insight and tools to protect the relationship. And no matter what the other person has done or said, you have played a part in getting to this moment, and you have the power to change things. Remember our instruction to be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. As you reflect, If you recognize anything at all that you may have done better, you may reset the environment by offering a sincere apology. This apology has to be sincere, not sarcastic. It starts with, "I'm sorry not "I'm sorry you," or "I'm sorry but." It will include a change of heart in you. Remember that God has promised this for us. We so easily get caught up in the negative cycle, and even if we haven't said anything as bad as the other person, we have probably thought some things that were unkind or untrue, and unintentionally responded in a way that further triggered the other person. We are very rarely blameless.
This can be a pivotal moment in the relationship, a moment where you share your sincere desire to strengthen the relationship. Also, as you step out of the conversation, now is a great time to create mutual purpose. Have an honest conversation with the person about what your hopes are and see if this aligns with what they also would like. Share how you feel about them and that your desire is to strengthen the relationship, recognizing that these moments are important and that you don't want this issue or topic or event to put a wedge between you. Let them know that you are more interested in finding a win-win outcome than getting your way. Now is the time for you to remember what is most important. What is the purpose behind your point? Winning the point is not nearly as important when you think about it in a big scheme of things. So strive for the purpose rather than arguing the point. Explore common ground. What do you both already agree on? I know you and I both want what's best for everyone involved. I know neither one of us wants to continue to rehash the same old argument. I know we both want to move forward in a positive way. And discuss what you both want to take away from the conversation. So how do we do this? Once you've established a mutual purpose, talk about what a successful conclusion for the conversation looks like. Do you need to decide on a next step or final decision? Do you need to understand where the disconnect is so you stop bickering about something? Do you need to solve a problem? Maybe all you need is to finally understand each other, even if you don't agree with each other. All of these are worthy conclusions as long as you both agree it's the right conclusion. It's also important to stay connected to your heart and recognize your stories here. Be humble and acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. Challenge yourself to stay open-minded. What can you learn from this person? There's something going on that you don't understand, and now's your chance to get smarter about it. Don't be hard-headed about your point of view or your idea of what the perfect solution is. You might need to give a little. You probably should give a little. The truth is, we're not as smart as we think we are, and the best solutions usually come when more hearts and minds are involved. And finally, try to understand where they're coming from. What happened in their past or is part of their belief system that may be causing them to see things differently from you? The more you understand about them, the more likely you are able to bridge whatever gap there is.
Paul gives us a great example of this during his travels in Acts. Wherever Paul went, he would relate the message he was sharing to the audience he was addressing. For example, in Athens, he knew the city's history, the political climate, the culture, and the religious structure that had people worshiping many idols, believing each one was responsible for providing specific blessings in different areas of their lives. His approach was to strike up conversations, to ask questions, and to learn as much as he could. One day, while talking with people in the synagogue and around the marketplace, a group of Epicurean philosophers began to question him on religious and political issues. Because he was educated about their culture and his approach, he was respectful and not confrontational. They became curious and wanted to know more about the ideas he was presenting. Paul knew one of their biggest fears was that the gods they worshiped didn't care about them, or that they were missing a God who could bless them in a certain area. He addressed this fear by explaining that there was only one true God who was God of all, and that worshiping all the other idols didn't matter as long as they believed in the one God of all creation. He quoted poets and philosophers that they respected, and used those quotes to address their specific fears. Paul was able to communicate clearly with the philosophers because of his study of their background and experiences. He showed understanding and built common ground, and as a result, a great number became believers in Athens. There is so much power in seeking to understand each other. When we show respect and acknowledge that the history and past experiences others have lived are key in forming their opinions today, we can very often understand and respect points of view that are different from ours. We can remain true to our own convictions and still have great respect for others. Producer Benjamin Watson has said, "Never allow conviction to rob you of compassion. Meet other people where they are and deliver both." And if we go back to the truth that at the end of the day, we cannot control other people, we can only control ourselves, we may come to the conclusion that the highest purpose we can strive for in certain situations is to simply understand each other better. Understanding different points of view is a worthy goal. We don't have to agree with each other on every point to love each other and show respect for each other. We are called to love each other, not control or change each other. The only one with the power to change us is God, and God promises to do that if we ask. Let's close in prayer. Dear God, help us to open our hearts and minds to your Spirit. Help us to focus on the people you bring our way each day. We each long to be known, understood, and heard, so help us to be open to listening to others with empathy and sensitivity. Help us to have wisdom to discern when to speak and when to listen. Guide us, Lord, to learn the skills necessary to build healthy relationships with our family and friends as we follow your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.